So privileged to have you here. My name is Jeremy Barker. I serve at the Religious Freedom Institute as the director of RFI's Middle East Action Team. I will get the privilege to moderate our panel, discussion later in the event, so we'll say more about that now. But for the moment, I get to turn it over to the president of the Religious Freedom Institute, Tom Farr, to open today's event.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's a pleasure to be with you. I just want to say a few words about RFI, and then I'll turn it over to Evelina and our co-hosts for today so that we can get started. I just want to, as I say, a couple of words about what we do at the Religious Freedom Institute. We are a fairly new NGO. We've been around for 6 years, going on 7. And we have a model of religious freedom that we try to apply to everybody. Obviously, there are very different groups and countries and attitudes in this world about religious freedom. We try to make the argument that religious freedom is good for you, no matter who you are, where you are. Unless you're a terrorist or a totalitarian, it's good for you. If you are one of those, it's bad for you, which is why religious freedom is good. It is good for human dignity, for individuals, for people who need the freedom, not the compulsion, but the freedom to be religious if they choose to be. And it's good for societies because it tends to help develop political stability and social harmony among people. It also contributes to economic growth and to the decline of religion-related violence. Just think about that. One of our colleagues wrote a book entitled Weapon of Peace: How Religious Freedom Combats Terrorism. Now, if that's true, that's a powerful tool. Well, we make these arguments. We obviously don't make them the same way to the Chinese that we do to the Tanzanians or to the Americans or the Brits or whoever, the French. We believe it's a powerful model because it's true. It's true about human beings, also true about societies. Now, Jeremy, who spoke just a moment ago, is the head of our Middle East operations. And where's Miles? Miles is here. Miles Windsor is his colleague in our Middle East Action Team. We have one other colleague who is not here with us today, I believe. But their job is to take this model into the countries of the Middle East and to mold them to the situation they're in. So, for example, in Iraq, where Jeremy and his family live, and in Egypt, and places like this, we take this model to civil society leaders. And we hold seminars and training sessions with them, meaning religious leaders, with parliamentarians, with leaders of various religious and non-religious groups who come together to hear our argument. It's an empirical argument. It's not just a bunch of assertions, and it's not just preaching. It really is based on long study and, we hope, understanding by us of our audience. We never tell Christians how to be Christians, or Muslims how to be Muslims, or Ahmadi how to be Ahmadi. We treat people with respect as seekers of truth, and we try to explain to them how religious freedom helps that search, helps them. But more importantly in these societies, how it can help Egypt, how it can help Iraq, how it can help Tunisia or Algeria, or wherever the case may be. So that's what Jeremy and Miles and all of RFI do. We have other action teams. We work in the United States. We work in Europe. We're very happy to be in Britain. If I might just say a personal word, I'm an inveterate, lifelong Anglophile because my dad was stationed here, and I studied British history in graduate school, and I've been here many times. So other than my own country, this is my favorite country. And it truly is a special relationship between the United States and Great Britain. So with that, to make a few opening remarks for Refcemi, the Deputy Director, is Evelina Okab. So please, Evelina, join us, please.
Thank you very much. And indeed, I'm here in my capacity as the Deputy Director of Refcemi. Refcemi is a relatively new organization, was established in 2019 by Archbishop Angelos. Refcemi is the Coptic word for advocacy. And indeed, what we do, or what we are the Coptic Orthodox Office for Advocacy and Public Policy. And we've been working on a number of different projects, including we have few projects, government-funded projects in Syria, Iraq, Egypt, engaging especially young people in those countries. Back in 2019, we were also tasked with trying to implement Recommendation 3 of the Bishop of Truro Review. And Recommendation 3 of the Bishop of Truro Review looks into whether we should name the phenomenon of the persecution of Christians. And we conducted a number of oral hearings, roundtables with civil society, and trying to identify what should be the best response. And we produced a report for the government to implement this recommendation accordingly. We've been also responsible for a number of roundtables accommodating civil society from different religious or belief groups and trying to engage on topics such as genocide, atrocity crimes, more broadly, religious persecution around the world, the situation of Uyghurs, situation of Uyghurs in China, situation of the Rohingyas in Myanmar, Yazidis and Christians in Iraq, and many more. And last year we also launched a new project, which is a training for young people on the right to freedom of religion and belief, trying to equip them with skills and with knowledge for them to be advocates also and engage on the topic of freedom of religion and belief, because we need the young people to know more about the topic and engage. As young people engage, for example, on climate change, and they are incredible advocates, powerful advocates on the topic, we want them also to play their part in advocating on behalf of those persecuted because of their religion or belief. So this is what we've been doing over the last few years, and we hope, of course, to engage more in this area, and of course to work with you all. So welcome to this session. And Archbishop Angelos will be here a little bit later, and he'll be able to share a few words with you as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'll go ahead now at this point and invite our panelists up to join us at the table. I'll introduce briefly our speakers, and really the goal of this event is to surface, as the framing of the event is to build on positive developments in the region. And so we'll be hearing from a number of individuals and organizations and efforts that are happening across the region. So I'll invite first His Eminence, Archbishop Fawzi, who's the Archbishop of the province of Alexandria in Cairo, so to join us, as well as Dr. Naila Tabara, the president of the Adyan Foundation from Lebanon, Mr. Ghassan Ayari from Atalaki Foundation in Tunisia, and then Mr. Salah Ali, the General Coordinator of the Iraq Religious Freedom and Anti-Discrimination Roundtable in Iraq. Archbishop Fawzi, we'll turn to you first, and you get to kick us off, coming from Egypt, perhaps one of the more, I think all of the countries we'll be discussing today are quite interesting and dynamic. But take us into, from your vantage point as overseeing the newly created Bishopric of Alexandria, into your work, both the challenges as well as where you see positive opportunities that can be built on.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. It was a privilege, actually, to be part of the forum. Linking with so many people from different parts of the world, which helps us back in Egypt. I've met diplomats and government representatives from Egypt, from Algeria, from Iraq, and which was great actually to link and network with people who are going to be a great support for us as we return back home after the conference. So thank you so much for the conference and for inviting me. And thank you for allowing me to be here with you and share some of the news of Egypt. I think the question was about the positive. So let's focus on the positive. Actually, since the change of leadership in Egypt in 2013, we have much more positive relationship between the Muslim community and Christian community in Egypt. And this has been very clear in allowing the licenses of new churches, which is something didn't happen for a very long time, from the 70s actually. The president comes to the cathedral in Cairo to congratulate the Christian community with the Christmas celebration. Never happened before. Opening new mosque and the cathedral, allowing the Pope to go to the inauguration of the mosque, and the Sheikh al-Azhar, Grand Imam, to go inauguration of the church. So there are very positive signs of more acceptance between the two communities. Of course, there are problems and troubles still in the level of the grassroots in the villages, many challenges, but we encourage, as a church and as a Christian community, all the positive signs of moving forward and having a good relationship between the two communities. So this is from the governmental side. I think the government now encouraging the change of the religious speech. And this year, if you follow the Grand Imam fatwas, you will see that there are some changes in the ideology and ideas of more acceptance, even some of the inheritance laws which has been accepted in the Islamic laws, Sharia law, for very long. There are some changes in this. His position on the marriage and Muslims should marry more than one wife, I think they're changing this as well and saying this is in the case of necessity, and reverting to hadith and trying to dig out some hadith which encourages Muslims to have only one wife. So there are changes in the speech and changes in the relation between the two communities. Well, this is good, and my belief actually as a Christian community living in an Islamic context is always to look for the positive signs and encourage it to be living in peace. And that's the main target in this. Looking at our ministry as a church, as you were saying that we are a new province. We have been the Diocese of Egypt for very long, from 1976. Diocese of Egypt was North Africa and the Horn of Africa. And since 1976, the church grew in Egypt, North Africa, and the Horn of Africa to the degree that the Anglican Communion realized that now the diocese can become a province. And the inauguration happened in June 2020. And now we are in transitional period till 2025, when 4 bishops are elected to the 4 new dioceses. So on the level of working in the community in Egypt and the society, we as a church cannot ignore the needs in Egypt. If you are a believer, a true Christian living in a society, and there is a great need in the society, you cannot just ignore the needs. So we have educational work, we have schools, nurseries, we have a deaf unit, we have vocational training for the deaf, we have a special needs school, all these to serve the community, and we serve 90% Muslims in this organization. In the medical work, we have 2 big hospitals in Munufiyah and in Sadat City. It's doing a lot of work to the community, giving them an affordable treatment, the best treatment, because we bring many professional doctors from Britain, from the States, from Europe, from Australia, and they do a very professional operations and help and train the doctors. We have the Surgeons Institute in the hospital, and we have a nursing institute. We have a shortage of nurses in Egypt. So with the medical side, we're doing a lot in the medical side. With refugees, we serve between 35,000 to 40,000 refugees every year in Egypt. We have HIV clinic, we have TB clinic, we have vocational office to train the refugees who find the jobs for themselves, because Egypt has been the land of refuge since the time of Jesus, or even before, when we had so many Jews living in Alexandria, writing the Septuagint, as you know. So the refugees work, the educational and medical work. And we also have the cultural and media work, which is phenomenal, really, because with the culture work, we have hundreds of Muslims entering the gates of the church every week to just share in arts and music in the community. And we build friendship and good relationship with the community through the cultural events. It's a safe place. They come and they know that we are there to welcome them and to have a real strong relationship with them. That's the involvement in the society. With the ecumenical work, we've been a member of the Egypt Council of Churches, the Middle East Council of Churches, the World Council of Churches. We have a very strong relationship with the churches in Egypt, 5 main churches in Egypt. And with the Egypt Council of Churches, Pope Tawadros, His Holiness, invited all the leaders from the Middle East to come to the Logos Center. And we had a very fruitful meeting in San Bishoy Monastery. So on the level of ecumenical relation, there are very good and positive signs. And the last thing I want to say about the Christian-Muslim relationship, because this is, I feel, we are planted in an Islamic community for a reason. And we are there to serve the people. So we started a center for Christian-Muslim partnership and study center. And this center was inaugurated in April this year. And the idea of this center is to invite people to come from all over the world, to come to Egypt, and to have this exposure to Christian-Muslim relationship, to go to Al-Azhar University, to visit His Holiness in his office, and to meet with leaders in Egypt and discuss how can we build good and strong relationship and live in harmony in the country. This is one side. The other side is the academic side, when people want to do like master degree or PhD. We have archives, all the history of the church in Egypt, with the British colonization and the missionaries and all that. We have this very strong archives. People come and do PhDs in our archives in Cairo. And some scholars come and teach in our Alexandria School of Theology. The third part of this center is the initiatives. We create initiatives to bring leaders from a Muslim community and Christian community. We had sheikhs and imams coming with clergy, and this initiative is to bring them and stay together in a conference, and they discuss and do workshops. And I still remember very vividly, I went to one of the schools in Cairo and Alexandria, and I was standing in a classroom for the children with a sheikh standing with me. Both, I'm wearing my robes and he's wearing his robes. And then we're standing in front of the classroom talking about Islam and Christianity and how can we have this strong relationship. This year, we're starting an initiative of an environmental, COP27 is coming to Sharm el-Sheikh this year. So we're creating a joint initiative between Muslims and Christians, going to the beaches, collecting plastic bags, doing gas from the combust in some of the villages in Upper Egypt. So many, like 15 different initiatives to do to get ready and raise awareness in the community of how can Muslims and Christians join together in doing something good for their environment and for their country. Yeah. So is that positive enough, Jeremy?
There's a lot of positives that we can mine there, and I think it demonstrates some of what was mentioned even in the opening of how religious freedom, what creates the space for the Anglican community to live out their faith and bring it to bear in hospitals, in schools, in picking up.
I think religion is very important in Egypt. And if religious leaders speak to the community in environmental issues, in anything, people will listen very carefully. So we have a role to play.
Definitely. Now we'd like to turn to Dr. Naila. And I know Adyan Foundation has an impressive remit, certainly within Lebanon, which has its own challenges, but also across the region, across a number of domains. So we'd love to hear from your vantage point from Beirut and work both there and across the region, where you see both the challenges and how you all are navigating it.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. So maybe I would like to just put things in context and tell you a little bit how and when and why Adyan was created. So Adyan was created Adyan means religions in the plural, and it was created in 2006 by Christian and Muslim co-founders. I'm one of the co-founders, one of the Muslim ones. So we created Adyan in 2006 and decided to call it Adyan at a time where civil society in Lebanon was growing a lot and saying, let us not talk about religions. Let us put religions aside and meet on the human level, around our humanity. For us, it's definitely important to meet around our humanity, but it was also important not to put religions aside. We understood why people wanted to put religions aside, because Lebanon had gone through civil war and people were killed based on their identity. We used to have checkpoints and people would be stopped and killed based on their identities besides the conflict zones. So a lot of people preferred not to talk about religions. For us, it was important as part of reconciliation that didn't happen on the government level to create spaces where people actually talk about their belonging and talk about issues related to religions and public life and the public sphere, religion and politics. Because as long as these topics remain taboo, we will not learn how to live together and how to construct together. So that was our initial point. So we started creating spaces of dialogue and encounter and realized that in fact when people are meeting, not only are they learning about each other religiously, correcting the wrong ideas they have about each other religions, but as persons belonging to communities and as each community has its own memory, collective memory, these were spaces for people to learn about the collective memory of each other and recognize the hurt that each memory carries, the suffering that each memory and each community carries in its own memory. And I think this is a fundamental point of dialogue, of bringing people from different faith communities together to hear not only the religious aspect and correct their information, but also to hear the pain that they carry in their memory and their hopes for the future. With that, we developed the concept of inclusive citizenship. That if we want to build together, we need to create a framework, and that framework to be where not one religion is controlling the public sphere, nor shunning religions completely away from the public sphere, but calling it inclusive citizenship, where all of us can meet and see how we can develop systems and perceptions that allow us to have one common vision, at the same time accepting our diversity, whether religion or belief, or even cultural. The idea that a lot of countries, whether from the East or the West, that we need to be unified in one language, or we need to be unified in one religion to feel unified, is outdated. Today, all our countries are diverse. So that is the idea of inclusive citizenship. How can we think of a system and basically also translate that in our constitutions where we accept all of this diversity? Of course, in Lebanon, it's already the diversity, the religious diversity is there in the constitution. Freedom of conscience is actually there, and I mean Lebanon and Tunis have that in the constitution. The religious diversity is recognized, but but it's partial. We have 18 recognized community, but they belong to Christianity and Islam, Judaism also, but the Jewish presence is very minimal today. But there are other groups in Lebanon that are not recognized. So although it is one of the countries that is that could be seen as an example in the area, yet also FORB is not complete, and there is a lot of work to do there. One of the things that we're working on currently is on personal status laws, because in Lebanon we do not have a civil code for family laws or personal status laws, but we have 15 codes that belong to the different religious groups, because some of them are grouped together. So we have 15 codes, and in those there's an overlap of violations of both FORB and women's rights, because generally most of them are discriminatory towards women, and especially in what concerns custody of children, guardianship of children. So they would give the woman custody until a certain age, but the guardianship, the person who decides about where they study, about their health, their travels, is the uncle, or it has to be a male. So these things, and also there is discrimination when it's a mixed marriage, because some of these churches or Islamic groups allow mixed marriages, religious mixed marriage, but for example, the woman would lose the child very early in case of divorce or death of a husband, or not have a custody of the child at all if she is from a different religion. Also the question of inheritance, even if they are married but she is from a different religion, she doesn't inherit, nor do her children inherit from her, because they follow the religion of the father. So there's a lot of overlap of discrimination here. With time also, we started training trainers after training them on inclusive citizenship, so trainers from Arab countries on inclusive citizenship. We've started developing trainings on FORB. And in our training on FORB, we include the religious perspective of FORB. The new religious documents from Al-Azhar, from the Catholic Church, from the World Council of Churches, other documents that can promote FORB. So this is also in line with another work that we've been doing, is opening also the dialogue between religious leaders and civil actors, academics, on FORB, so that no one thinks in silo, and so that it encourages the reflecting further and further documents from religious representatives or authorities. And finally, now we have started a project where we are creating a hub. Also Al-Talaqi is in partnership with us in that, where we are creating sort of an observatory monitoring FORB in 6 countries: Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, Lebanon, Iraq, and Jordan, monitoring both the advances in FORB and also the violations of FORB. And this, by the end of this year, this will be in a written report, but also online, and will be updated every 3 months. I will stop here to give other people.
It's exciting, and lots to come back on both the programmatic things that are being put forward, but also some of the work around inclusive citizenship and that framing, and how that gets to some of these issues as well. We'll turn now to one of your partners, to Al-Talaqi, Sana Sayari, coming from Tunisia. Thank you so much for joining us. I think we're going in descending order of the 2014, I think, was when Al-Talaqi was started, so also a recent organization. So thank you so much. Tell us about the work you all are involved in Tunisia.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. It has been a great 2 days, incredible 2 days in the Ministerial Conference. We had the chance to discuss many issues and challenges that we are facing here in Tunisia with many international organizations, diplomats, and government representatives. Al-Talaqi actually was founded in 2016. We are now celebrating 6 years. since the foundation, and we are trying our best in Tunisia to move forward. So I'm also so delighted to be here with you today in this Fringe event that not only will discuss challenges in our countries in the MENA region, but also to see the positive aspects and initiatives that has been held in different areas and arenas to advance the FORB in our countries, and in particular for me in Tunisia. So I will give a little introduction for the Talaq organization. It's a place where I had the chance not only to work on individual freedoms and the FORB in particular, but also to let my voice heard in my country as a minority myself. So Talaqi is the leading organization in Tunisia when it comes to the topic of the freedom of religion or belief in general, or the religious minorities in particular. This organization was founded in 2016 by a group of youth from different religious minorities. The main focus at that time was advocating for a diverse society. Today we are a key voice in defending the rights of religious minorities and making their voice, our voice, heard. In order to achieve these objectives, our partnerships has been expanded nationally and internationally with governmental and non-governmental organizations and actors, as well as incubating multiple conferences, trainings, workshops, and advocacy campaigns that covered almost all the regions of the Republic of Tunisia. In addition, Talaqi accommodated a variety of speakers and interveners that are specialized in religious matters, public affairs, including citizenship, religious pluralism, peaceful coexistence, women and gender rights, and the overall human rights matters. So my country, Tunisia, is always portrayed as an ethno-religiously homogeneous country, especially when we compare it to not the countries of North Africa, but especially when we talk about the Middle East. So our minorities have been undergone a process of invisibilization and assimilation into the dominant Arab Muslim identity. This image has been continuously promoted by successful Tunisian governments from the independence in 1956 until today, while the country's longest diversity has started to be acknowledged in recent years. The long process of invisibilization and assimilation into the dominant Arab Muslim identity has put the country's religious minorities in a position of a second-class citizens, unfortunately. It should be noted that the majority of Tunisians are Muslims and overwhelmingly Muslim, Sunnis. Religious minority groups constitute an active part of our society when it comes to the role they are playing in different domains in the country, among which we can mention Shiite Muslim, Ibadite Muslim, Baha'is. The most traditional community that we are having in Tunisia is the Jews, with a continuous presence of almost 3,000 years. Christians also from all the denominations. Since the success of the Tunisian revolution of freedom and dignity that gave it birth to all the Arab Spring in 2011, new Tunisian constitution upheld many key civil, political, social, economic, and cultural rights. Here I think that Talaqi, with many other civil society organizations, engaged efforts with the state in incubating reforms into the individual rights that we are having in the country. So Tunisia enjoys degrees of secularism and religious tolerance. For instance, there is no penalty, for example, for apostasy in Tunisia. The freedom of religion is defined in our constitution, in the 2014 constitution, as the freedom for any individual to adhere to the confession of his or her choice, or to reject them all. That's the freedom of conscience. To express and teach our beliefs. That's the freedom of opinion. And the public worship also is guaranteed by the 2014 constitution. That's the freedom of worship. As we are talking today about the positive factors related to the reality of religious freedom in general through the promotion and consolidation. Our organization took the initiative to establish the principle of equality and non-discrimination in dealing with religious or ideological differences with its partners from different religious organizations and groups. I think that in this attempt to tackle national issues, one of the most important initiatives that echoed inside and outside of Tunisia in 2021 was the announcement of the signing of the National Charter for Peaceful Coexistence. At-Talaqi organization supervised the preparation and the signing of a national charter after a great work that lasted for 3 consecutive years, in which the majority of religious components in Tunisia were gathered at one table, especially those unrecognized by the state, where many basic issues of public concerns and religious-related issues in Tunisia were discussed. In this context of these efforts from our organization and in continuous communication with state institutions, including the parliament and the ministry, especially the Ministry of Religious Affairs, the establishment of a special department within the ministry has been officially announced in 2021 following a national symposium held by the At-Talaqi on March 23, 2021, with a wide presence of religious leaders, international organizations, and official participation of parliament and government representatives. These initiatives are only the beginning of a long-term process in order to achieve positive change within society and state institutions, in which religious, intellectual, racial, and ethnic diversity and pluralism are taken into account, and pave the way for the existence of a real ground in which all these components coexist in peace, love, and tranquility that guarantees all the rights and freedom within the framework of a democratic civil state in which the state is based on the supremacy of law and respect for human rights. That's what we are trying to do from the revolution until today, passing by 2016, the year of the founding of our organization.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, a lot of phenomenal work. We'll come back to some of that as well. Let's turn now to Salah Ali, coming from Iraq, and a relatively new initiative in the Iraq Religious Freedom and Anti-Discrimination Roundtable, and in a context with a lot of challenges, but also some really strong bright spots. So Salah, tell us some about the work of the Roundtable and other aspects that you're involved in.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for the invitation. And I think we have some similarity because we're all from the Middle East. And Iraq, as you know, is a diverse country. We have a quite number of different religious groups lives in Iraq. And basically, Iraq Religious Freedom Roundtable, we just found out there was a huge gap in terms of religious restriction in Iraq, and that restriction in the past was the main reason of the violence in Iraq. And as you know, we have in Iraq 2 governments. One is the central government, and we have the regional government as well. And in the central government, there are only 3 or 4 religious, officially recognized: Islam, Christianity, Sabi al-Mandai, and Yazidis. But in public, we have different religions as well, like Baha'i, Zoroastrian, and Kakai Yarsan, but not officially recognized. And we have some other faith and belief groups, such as atheists and Jewish, are not either publicly or in the officially recognized. So that's for the central part. But for the regional part, which is the Kurdistan region, all these groups I mentioned, they have office at the Ministry of Endowment and Religious Affairs. And seems they have more freedom for religious groups than the central government, which is, I think, part of the prosperity and development in the North region is because that part of because of that freedom. And people, I think right now just investing more in those areas than the central government, which is, I think is a great success, and I think is a great point to mention in our work really, because religious freedom leads to development, to progress, and to peace building. So that's about Iraq in terms of the legal point of view. And the government, I don't think as strong as before right now. By strong, I mean they can't be totalitarian. They have totalitarian system. The reason is I think it's public, and youth in particular have great access to social media, and they can do a lot of work. I mean, we are, as a civil society organization, we are organized team, but other people I've seen on the social media, they do lots of platform, bringing out the positive and bringing out the publishing a lot of initiative, and like the small initiative they see on their daily life between different religious groups, and the collaboration between these teams, and short stories as well. And I think that's really a great point, that the government cannot do more restriction on the public, on the religious groups. So I think also the other part is we need, a couple of minutes ago I was talking to my friend Ghassan, how we could establish more religious groups in the Middle East as well. Religious roundtable, or just the groups that could connect together and share our positive result of the initiatives that we are implementing, in order just to ensure that we not go back to the 10 years or 20 years before, where the government was able to restrict and put limitation on freedom of religion in our area. And also we have to recognize that religious restrictions always leading to the violence and to stopping the progress of any countries, particularly in our region. And also I think as a civil society organization, it's our responsibility to deliver the message, the right message, then the language that we talk to the public, to the people, to the religious groups. And because the point is that in the Middle East, religion, it takes a huge space of people's life. So it's really when you they feel that they are in danger when you talk about something is new, like religious freedom. Because previously also we have been experienced that people still don't know what religious freedom is. Because in Iraq, we never had that much freedom. And when you talk about freedom and about the religious freedom, it means something. And I think people in our countries, the government, most of the government in the Middle East, they take the money and they take the jobs. And the only thing that is left for people is their religion and their faith. So they don't want, so they don't compromise with their religion at any cost. So I think it's really important to have the initiatives that suit the local context. And the religious freedom roundtable that we have right now is a great space for religious group to come and talk freely about their religion, about their rights as well, because previously their rights been violated. So I think in itself is a great initiative to have and to create platform for people to talk. And then that was our first stage. And the next stage, we have planned to work vertically more with the government. And if we could endorse, if the government could endorse what we presented in a law format, and right now we are drafting a new law about promoting religious freedom and preventing discrimination in Iraq. So I think right now we are working on the ground horizontally with the other communities, with these groups, and vertically with the government to draft and submit a new law to do some more legislative advocacy. But the other point just I want to mention is that in countries where the rule of law is not strong, so the law, it doesn't make that much sense. So what you want to do is really to work on creating more collaboration between the communities. And as Abuna mentioned before, we need support from the majorities as well, because minorities don't have that much power. And I think the only way to do that is just through dialogue and through understanding each other, and just and I've just noticed, since we're in the Middle East, I've noticed there are really good people. They're out there from the majority as well, from imams, from and other religious groups, religious leaders, that we could utilize their role for the sake of our case, which is promoting religious freedom. And I think that's is a good point. So I think that's all I can say, Jeremy, because I talked in the past 2 days a lot.
Yeah,
that would be great.
Yeah, certainly you recognize there's been a lot of conversation over the last 2 days, but I think each of you really hit on much of the lived reality that we're trying to address here, and it really comes down to recognizing that there's difference, that there's not homogenous societies, and then what will it look like to live with that difference. Wanted to come back, just maybe one question to each of you to reflect a little bit on something you brought up, and then we'll bring the audience into the conversation as well. And Archbishop, you mentioned some of the positive developments that have happened from the government at the top in really visible ways, things that truly are remarkable, as well as the work and the very active role that your community has. And yet, kind of throughout the country, in Upper Egypt and in other places, both the social but also even government issues still seem to arise kind of outside of the capital. Do you see kind of progress of these ideas dispersing throughout the society, and where might there be progress to see this continue to take hold and build momentum throughout society?
I think we're reaping what was planted in Egypt in the 70s, and you need a generation for the whole country to change. Even if the leaders of the country are doing their best and working very hard, still so much on the grassroots need to change. So the idea of accepting the other and having a harmony, I think it's so simple, because Muslims will continue to live in Egypt, and after 1400 years, Christians will continue to live in Egypt. And if you realize that we will continue to live together, so why not live in peace and harmony? I think if this message is conveyed to all the different levels in society, maybe in the next generation we will have good relation in all levels, not in the villages, not the problems we have in the villages or in Upper Egypt, but we will still have problems in the capital in Alexandria. So I can't say that 100% there are no problems. There are definitely problems. But what I'm saying that in the scale, we are really moving up as things change every month and every year.
Yeah. Talking about the next generation and what it looks like to bear, to see the harvest that comes from that. Something that stood out in the origin story of Adyan was a push of kind of, let's put religion to the side. And I've heard this from those in the region. The last thing we need is more religion in the region. Yet it's so profound of individual and communities as well. And so the very origin of Adyan is about that. And I think about some of the major movements that have led people to the streets in 2019 and beyond, and kind of the energy that is there within the Lebanese youth and others to create a vision for a society that is inclusive. Where do you see this talk around religious freedom and the role of religious freedom within that kind of movement towards the future of Lebanon? Is there acceptance of this, or how does this fit into the upcoming generation?
Okay, so you're right. When we started seeing people going down, on the streets in Lebanon, we felt this openness towards diversity, and acceptance of diversity, but refusal of sectarianism, which is so accepting diversity as an enrichment, but refusing the whole system structure of clientelism and corruption that comes with with sectarianism and sectarian politics in Lebanon. So this is important. But as was mentioned earlier, people don't know what religious freedom is. And freedom of religion or belief is. You asked us to share with you some of our challenges. Recently in Lebanon, we had a man, not very serious, who proclaimed himself a prophet. So, he was sort of a joke, but I was praying that I hope he doesn't get arrested, because we will have to defend him, and he's a joke, the guy. But he got arrested. The Islamic Authority presented against him in a court, and he got arrested. He was released. But the idea was, how dare he? This is blasphemy, and this is against Islam. And it wasn't. The guy didn't say anything against other religions. He just proclaimed himself prophet. So we and other organizations issued a statement, but that was seen very negatively from religious leaders. And so we had to, although we had already given them seminars on freedom of religion or belief. So the concept of freedom of religion or belief needs time to get understood and to get accepted. So I think we need to build. And you asked me about the younger generation. We're trying to work in Lebanon and hopefully soon also in Iraq and other countries with children since very early age, to get them first to know about other religions, to know about FORB, but also to develop in them those skills, the skills of listening, the skills of empathy, the skills of understanding their own emotions and understanding the emotions of others, in order to feel with them, basically, and to refuse all form of discrimination, whether religious, whether based on religion or belief, or other forms of discrimination. These need a build-up. But just to say that, yes, we have some new elements, but I think we need to work a lot to create a new culture that is based on a real understanding, and that is not a superficial we love each other, we come all of us together attitude.
Yeah, that's great. Ghassan, you mentioned a couple of the initiatives that Atalaki is doing. One, the charter that brought together a host of groups and kind of countering this perception of a homogenous Tunisia. Also, in your own background in filmmaking, has done some really impressive documentaries spotlighting some of the different communities that enrich the tapestry of Tunisia. Tell us a little bit about why you think that's important and how that contributes into the work that you're doing.
Actually, as you mentioned, Jeremy, my academic background is on audiovisual and movie direction. So arts for me, and not only for me, for Talaqi also is something so important. We launched it in 2021, a project called Coexistence Tour. And actually, it's a series of audiovisual production, as we believe that it's important and capable of a positive change within society, especially in regards to stereotypes. So about the different others. In this context, we launched this tour, which is working on producing a group of short films and spots. The first one was produced in 2021, entitled Tunisia Unites Us. It was released in April with the support of a national organization in which we highlighted the coexistence and religious diversity in Tunisia through 4 religious leaders. One was from the Muslim community, from the Sunni Muslim community. The second was from the Jewish community. The third from the Catholic Church, and the fourth was a Baha'i leader in Tunisia. So in November 2021, also we produced a documentary entitled Pilgrimage in Tunis, with the support of an international organization. The idea actually was to take a group of Tunisians and to visit religious monuments in the capital of Tunis. So we picked actually the Anglican Church in Tunis with the support of the Anglican Diocese in Egypt. We also filmed it in the Zaytuna Mosque, the famous Zaytuna Mosque of Tunis, and also in the synagogue of Tunis. Accompanied, of course, by religious leaders from these 3 communities, which provided the youth informations about the history of the buildings, their historical and religious symbolism, and highlighting also the role of religion in public life, and activating the meaning of peace, brotherhood, and peaceful coexistence through the discussion that the youth had with the representatives of each of those communities. So one part of the project was, that's one of the documentaries. We produced after that 2 or 3 others. But the idea actually was to take youth groups of 10 or 15 and to take a tour in different regions of Tunisia. Each time we pick a specific place of a specific minority. The youth got in touch with the religious leaders. We film all of that. Then we produce a documentary, and then we launch it on social media and then on the networks of our organization. And after that, there is the third part of it, which is the distribution of the movies in international festivals. And we had, for example, for Pilgrims in Tunis, it's a movie that was present in the international festival for building understandings in Oslo, with the presence of the Special Rapporteur of the UN, Dr. Fernande Varenes, on the minority issues. So that's one also of the approaches of Talaqi to the question of religious pluralism in Tunisia. So we don't have only the question of signing charters or trainings or seminars or workshops, even though it's so important to do that, but also we believe that arts, and especially for me personally, movies and cinema and audiovisual production in general, it's something that can approach the youth and to engage also the youth in the question of the forum.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you.
Salah, you mentioned the relation between religious restrictions and conflict, and certainly the last 2 decades at least. Iraq said conflict in a number of different ways, and some of it's been the absence of political governance, something you've worked on a lot in the disputed territories. How do you see religious freedom contributing to both kind of preventing or recovering from conflict in the places where you work and partners within the Roundtable?
Well, I think particularly in the disputed area, we have in the aftermath of ISIL, I mean, the social fabric in those regions were like really damaged. and the people start to realize that this restriction and misunderstanding. Do you know why ISIS attacked all these religious groups, but Yazidis most? The reason is because the idea and the stereotype is that there is public understanding and stereotype about Yazidis that they are the devil worshippers. So that's really is something that, I mean, the religious freedom is how we promote it. I mean, through education, which we don't have in our education curriculum anything about religious freedom. We don't study other religion. So if we don't know about them, then we don't know how to deal with them. And the stereotype is really in the government laws and Baha'i, for example. Baha'i is since 1970, according to Article 105, till today they are forbidden from exercising their rights in the country. We have constitution who allowing everyone to practice their religious ritual or just anything like they do in the public life or in their daily life. But in reality, it's not working like that. So we have restriction on the legal side and we have on the public because of the misunderstanding of other religion. So what we need is, religious freedom is to be free, but how you do it, how you promote religious freedom, you have to have a curriculum, you have to do it through certain activities, as Ghassan mentioned, through different initiatives in order to educate people about the religion as well, because there are a backlog and very misunderstanding about the religion that we need to come together and do more dialogues and to introduce to each other and just know about. So I think but if you don't have that freedom, you cannot meet. So we need to create more platform in order just to make sure that people meet and they know each other more. But without religious freedom, we cannot do it. So I think this is really important. But and I also just want to mention that the civil society organization have a great role in this, and they can do a lot of work. Personally, a couple of days ago, I was in US attending International Religious Freedom Roundtable. Religious freedom. And then we met lots of people, great people who have a lot of initiative from US that they are happy to help Iraq. So the civil society organization just bridging between those from outside and inside as well. And that makes our work more sustainable. And now we are in UK. Another day, just maybe tomorrow or a day after, I met Ghassan today and the other friends as well who we could do more collaborate on a lot of work. So I think the world is changing, and I think this vehicle of promoting religious freedom is just moving forward. And also it's important to let the government know that this is the benefit of the religious freedom. Not only face the government, say, okay, give me my right, this is my right. Because the Middle Eastern mentalities government is really tough. So you have to have different diplomacy and strategies in order just to persuade him or her or the government in general that is really the religious freedom just is good for the society, for the economy, and for the politics, and for everything.
Fantastic. To bring our event to a close, I would like to invite His Eminence Archbishop Angelos to offer closing remarks. So thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so very sorry to have missed this morning. I have a day job, so I had a funeral. And I was a funeral of a family member who was a family who's very close to me, and I did that and came, so I'm sure you'll excuse me for that. And I'm also very glad to see so many wonderful friends around the room, both on the panel and attending. And of course, we've had a very intense couple of days, and I think everyone has got conference fatigue. I know that over the past 2 days I was trying by location quite a lot, being in 2 places at the same time. Didn't quite work, but I did the best I could. And I'm very thankful for your resilience for being here. Just to catch up, just catch a couple of things which I did here while I was here. And Archbishop Sami, dear brother and friend, he's speaking about the reality of coexistence, and we are reaping what has been sown over the past 50 years. Everyone's talking about the Morsi period, the Muslim Brotherhood. In actual fact, I would like to take it even further since the revolution in the 1950s, with the Islamist thought having started to come in, the decline started. And suddenly, there was an Arabization, Islamization that meant you couldn't really live as a citizen unless you were Arab or Muslim. And that started to become much more prevalent. And that is going to take a generation. Bad news is it's going to take a generation with good intention. If you don't have good intention, it might take several generations. And so we don't know exactly where it's going. And Naila, I think, captured very much the idea of what happened in Lebanon and changes. And I think we saw that in Egypt, where you suddenly have flag waving in the street and people go out because there's this newly found optimism. But then reality hits and you think, actually, nothing has changed quite yet. You know, we had flag waving in Tahrir Square in Egypt, where everyone was saying, oh, you know, no more Christian or Muslim, we're just Egyptians. And yet the reality was, because of a political vacuum, an extremist religious organization came in, and it affected the whole of Egypt, Christians and Muslims. And that's why when it left, it wasn't just because of the Christians, it was because the majority of Muslims also rejected. That's very exclusive, and that was incredibly exclusive. Because if you didn't fit within the very tight mold of that Islamist thought, even as a Muslim, you became targeted. And I used to say to my Muslim friends, you know, I'm really sorry you're doubly jeopardized, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm a kafir. Right? You are a kafir, but you're also disloyal. You're a traitor. And I think that makes it, you know, doubly bad for them. And, you know, from there becomes that sort of desperation. And from there becomes a reality kicking in, and then you see real initiatives for change. And I think that's what we're seeing. You know, when we look at buzzwords like FORB, like freedom of religion or belief or religious freedom, unfortunately they mean something very, very different in the Middle East. And they come out of a very deep sense of insecurity, whether it is religious or political. Because if I'm strong enough to accept difference, then I'm not going to demonize you, as has been said so eloquently around the room. The only reason I'm going to demonize you is because if you look credible, then I don't. So I need to discredit you. And I think that becomes incredibly difficult. What else have we got? We have Ghassan and including young people, which I think is incredibly important, because they do have a vision. It may be slightly Puritan and idealistic, but this is where I don't believe in just youth revolutions, because young people may have lots of energy, but we're also proposing a very dangerous model of saying it's either the old or the young. What we do want is institutional memory. Because if people are just young and they come into the arena, they don't understand what happened in the revolution of 1950s. They don't understand what happened 10 years ago. And what they're seeing is a model that they have seen in the West somewhere, and they want to replicate, and they can't, so they become disillusioned. But when you have older, wiser people who are not just trying to hold on to power and pull it back, but who are trying to hand it over, so you have that wisdom, that insight, along with the energy and the idealism of young people. You put that together and you have an invincible force. I think that's incredibly important. And then Dr. Salah, I think in terms of understanding the other, whether it's the Baha'is or anyone else, it does need a depth and strength of self-definition that then leaves room for the other. Because I think sometimes our self-definition becomes exclusive and has no room for anybody else. And that becomes incredibly dangerous. But also, it needs to be given time to develop. When we throw words around like democracy, as if that is a magic bullet that is going to change everything all of a sudden. It's not going to change everything all of a sudden. What we need is time and stability for change, both. Time alone, if we're staying in the same surroundings, doesn't help because time just brings frustration. Stability without intention brings a sense of apathy. But when we have time and opportunity and stability and intention, they come together and they work. Since everyone's having a rant, I'm going to have my own. And that is that the concept of Abrahamic legitimacy in the Middle East. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think it is anybody's right to tell me that I am privileged to be able to observe my religion because it exists in somebody else's definition of legitimacy. I may disagree with people of other faiths and religions based on what they believe in, but I can't just say, sorry, you're not right because I don't think you're right. I can say, I don't think you're right on a theological basis, on a soteriological basis, but not just because you don't fit into a mold that I have created to give me satisfaction. And that's going to take time because the areas that we're talking about need much more development to be able to fit into what we're talking about. I've already spoken about this concept of pluralist theology. And Naila, I'm so sorry you got so badly attacked, but it's understandable because you obviously are saying something that's very different and quite revolutionary and visionary. And what you'll find is the sensible majority will sometimes clap for you, but it is those who are absolutely unaccepting of any kind of difference because of their insecurity who will come out and who will start to attack. Yes, identity crisis is very important, and I think we do all have an identity crisis of some sort or another. When we live our lives with confidence and comfort and are strong enough in our own identity, then we can accept others lovingly. I think it's time for us to throw the word tolerance out of the window, because I certainly do not want to be tolerated. I want to be respected. I want to be accepted. And so does everybody else. So tolerance in and of itself is rejected as a principle. I don't just want to tolerate other people. As a Christian, I am told to love, and to love without bounds, and to love my enemies. And I had this huge epiphany a few years ago of thinking, well, actually, what does that even mean? As a Christian, I'm not supposed to see anyone as an enemy. It's slightly contradictory. And the epiphany was, I need to love those who see me as their enemy, because that's how they define me. But I need to counter that with a spirit of love and understanding. And I think that's incredibly important. Yes, and manipulation. We talked about manipulation. Of course, manipulation, as His Grace said, is terrible because it falls on the simple people. And when you have simple people who are struggling with poverty and potentially a lack of education and illiteracy, the easiest way to manipulate them is economically or ideologically. And when that happens, then we have other more dangerous factors coming into play. I'm incredibly thankful for this opportunity for Miles and the whole team who has been driving force behind this, regardless of obstacles, myself being one of them. who have, we've been able to have this event as a joint event between RFI and Refcemi, which is our advocacy office of the church. And I think it's very encouraging that you are all here. For those of you who are visiting from abroad, you're very welcome. I just want to note Jackie in the back with her wonderful session yesterday. Thank you very much for all you're doing. And also, for those of you here in the UK, I've missed you. We need to go for a coffee. And it's all of this is built on relationship. All of this is built on interpersonal connections. And I am confident as this time goes on and as things continue with us journeying together, that we will be able to make a small difference. This impressive building didn't just happen. When you look at it from outside, it was built brick upon brick and stone upon stone. And if we are just putting one brick into that wall today, then we are contributing to what we're doing. However, the caveat is this: some people don't have the comfort and security of time. So we need to build quickly and build together. Thank you.